Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for staying until the end of the session or coming to my talk. My name is Xinyu Zhang. I'm a PhD student at NYU Star. Today I'm going to talk about a data-driven approach to improve artisans' productivity in distributed supply chain. And it's a joint work with my advisors, Professor Divya Singhvi from NYU Stern and Professor Somya Singhvi from USC Marshall. So before this project, I barely know anything about the artisanal industry. But it turned out the artisanal industry plays an important role in global economy. It generates a global revenue of over $900 billion per year. Perhaps even more importantly, it is the second largest source of employment in the developing world, especially for women from the underprivileged class. Unfortunately, despite its vital role in global economy and social sustainability, the artisanal industry is plagued by low productivity and the distributed nature of its supply chains, where millions of smallholder producers either operate independently or as a part of a larger network dispersed across a large geographic area, mainly relying on manual labor and traditional technique for production. So our collaborator, Japa Rugs, works under this context. As one of the leading manufacturers of handmade rugs in India, about 60% of their looms are suffering from low productivity. So given this setting, we couldn't stop and ask, how can we increase the productivity in distributed supply chains? To answer this question, we need to get on the ground. In fact, we've already made multiple field visits to the state Rajasthan in India. It is very eye-opening and greatly helped us to understand the process and challenges. We talked to over 30 weavers, branch managers, and supervisors, and we learned that supervisors who were recruited by Japa Rugs make frequent visits to the weavers, serve as a major node of communication between the company and the weavers. And we learned that supervisors, their interaction with weavers play a critical role in the supply chain. So immediately we have two questions. Does supervisor visit really increase the productivity? And if the answer is yes, how can we leverage supervisor visits to increase the productivity? These are actually the main contributions of this work. So we did rigorous empirical analysis to examine the impact of frequent supervisor visits on artisans' productivity. And we find that frequent supervisor visits can increase their productivity by 2 to 11%. Our analysis also suggests that the impact is heterogeneous, where rugs that are more difficult to weave enjoy additional 35% relative impact from more frequent supervisor visits. Leveraging insights from the empirical analysis, we propose this routing and scheduling framework to allocate supervisor visits smartly. So we find weavers that are low in productivity and formulate an optimization problem to target supervisor visits towards these looms. Our numerical analysis suggests a 3 to 16% increase in weaver productivity by following this framework. Encouraged by these nice results, we collaborated with Japa Rugs and ran field implementation over 200 looms for 25 consecutive weeks. And our DID results suggest an estimated 17% increase in weaving rates for the treatment looms. So this work followed at the intersection of three streams of literatures: the socially responsible operations in developing countries, the literature on improving worker productivity and workforce management, and last but not least, the work on quality control inspections and audits. I won't go into details in here for the interest of time, but I'd be happy to talk about them offline. So this is a roadmap that I'll follow, and let's start with rug production process. As you can imagine, it's not easy to make rugs, and there are many steps for you to follow. We start from the raw material to picking, hanging, spinning and dyeing, designing, weaving, washing, until we finally get the rug and ready for sale. And this is our focus. The rug weaving process stands in all the operations. It usually takes about 2 months to finish weaving a rug, and supervisors would make their visit to each loom every 3 to 4 days. So every morning, supervisors would leave their home and decide which village to visit for the day, where each village may contain multiple looms. For the sake of efficiency, they would visit nearby villages on the same day. Each supervisor is usually in charge of 2 to 15 nearby villages, and their goal is to track the progress, motivate weavers, and supervise rug quality. So supervisor visits can have a positive impact on weavers' productivity, as they help them to identify errors and thus weave more efficiently. However, if the weavers spend too much effort on trying to avoid errors, then supervisor visit can act as a source of distraction for their cognitive resources. and would thus reduce their overall productivity. So it's not clear a priori what is the impact of visit frequency on weaving rates. To answer this question, we need rigorous empirical analysis. So our data come in two segments. We got the 5-year rug production data with detailed rug level features. We have these supervisor visit records, which contains exact dates of supervisor visits to each loom. We also use the auxiliary data of distances and temperatures, which captures the supervisor travel distances and also the temperature at each loom location. So this is a summary of some key variable that we have, and we're interested in the supervisor visit frequency, measured as the average days between supervisor visits, as you can see on the second row on rug weaving rates, which is the first row. So our base specification is a fixed effects model. On the left-hand side, we have the log of average weaving rate for rug R on loom L assigned at time t. Our key variable of interest, IRT, is the average number of days between supervisor visits for rug R on loom L. We have an extensive set of controls, which includes rug level features that could affect weaving rates, the total weaving experience for weavers and supervising experience for supervisors, and also the average temperature at each loom location. In addition to these controls, we have loom fixed effects to account for idiosyncratic differences between weaving speed for different weavers. Harvesting season and year fixed effects are also added to account for seasonality and trend. Yeah.
Can I ask a clarifying question? So what is the relationship between supervisors and people working? Like, are they full-time employees? Are they independent contractors or just small businesses that do rugs for them? Like, what is the relationship?
Yeah, great question. So our collaborator, Jaipur Rugs, is like a very integrated manufacturer for rugs. So all these supervisors are full-time employee. So they're paid basically on a flat rate for their monthly work.
And what about the weavers?
So weavers are paid based on how much work they can finish within a month. So say you finish 7 pieces of rugs. Okay, that's impossible. You finish half a rug in the past months, then that's the incremental amount of work that you get weaved in the past months is how much you'll be paid based on.
And they're not employees. They can do as many rugs as they wish. Or as few as they wish.
Yes, but I mean, it's not like contractors either, in the sense that they do not work with other platforms or and they do. So basically, Jaipur Rugs is the only way that they can get these rugs being sold like outside of their country, and also yeah, that's it. Like Jaipur Rugs also provide all the raw materials, and that is delivered to the weavers by the supervisors as well.
Oh, I see. So raw materials come.
Yeah, yeah. So that's why I call it very integrated.
Do you measure any of the other outcomes of supervisor visits? Looks like you're just measuring productivity.
So we do have robustness checks with weaver payment data. I haven't gotten into that part yet. So we do see consistent results by using payment data of weavers.
Okay, but nothing on like worker wellness or
Wellness?
worker wellness.
Worker wellness. So this is a really interesting point in the sense that the overall idea of this project is to target supervisor visits towards those looms better in need of it, which does increase some of the workload for supervisors. But that's we had communications with our collaborators on this. They're actually happy about this because so far the status quo of the supervisors, they're being too slacked off according to their employer. They're not following the contract or their expectations. But for weavers, we do see a alignment of incentive in here, right? Their payment, what they get out of this entire thing, that's the income.
I guess going back to the idea of contracting, is their provision of future work contingent on their performance in these visits? or anything else like that that might introduce other sort of pressures?
But like,
I'll take this offline. Why don't
yeah,
you
yeah,
continue
let's
with your
do it offline, yeah. So this is our base specification. And standard errors are clustered at loom level to account for correlations across observations from the same loom. So although the fixed effects model accounts for heterogeneity on ROG, loom, and supervisor level, there are two basic econometric challenges. The first one is reverse causality. While we're interested in the impact of visit frequency on weaving rates, it is plausible that if the weaving rates are lower than expected, then supervisor would increase their visits to these looms. This would actually lead to an underestimation of the true effect size. The other challenge that we do see is unobserved confounders. So our model can still lead to biased estimates if there are unobserved variables that are correlated with both the weaving rate and the average number of days between supervisor visits. One example of this is the weaver's anticipated household expenditure during different times of the year. So an increase in that variable would lead to a increase in her intrinsic motivation to work, and that would increase the weaving rate. However, due to the close social bonds in rural communities, if the supervisors anticipated increased motivation, then he may just decrease the visit frequency. So this variable could be possibly correlated with the average number of days between supervisor visits and the weaving rate. And the omission of that variable would again lead to an underestimation of the true impact size. So to tackle these econometric challenges, we use the instrumental variable approach. The first instrumental variable that we have is the distance between loom and supervisor home location. So we believe in our setting, the distance should not have a direct impact on the weaver's weaving rate. However, a larger distance to the loom location from the supervisor's home would lead to less frequent supervisor visits because of the additional traveling effort that it requires. The other IV that we have is the average number of days between supervisor visits for the previous ROG assigned on the same loom. So it is a valid IV because the visit frequency for the previous ROG on the same loom should be correlated with the visit frequency for the current ROG because supervisors tend to maintain consistency in their visiting habit. However, because each loom takes several months to complete and our independent variable is an average of the number of days between supervisor visits, we do not, so the direct impact of the visit frequency for the previous ROG on the weaving rate for the focal ROG should be minimal. So now we're ready to look at the estimation results from the fixed effects model and the instrumental variable model. So we do observe a 2 to 11% decrease in weaving rate from every additional days between supervisor visits. Because our collaborator maintains a significant backlog of orders, this can be directly translated to a equivalent increase in monthly income with a more frequent supervisor visits. So our analysis also suggests that the impact is heterogeneous, where ROGs that are more difficult to weave have additional 35% relative increase from supervisor visits. So we perform a number of robustness checks to further strengthen our results. I won't go into details in here, but I'd be happy to talk about them offline. Okay, so now that we established the positive impact of supervisor visits weaving rates, how can we leverage this idea and allocate supervisor visits smartly? So ideally, we would want to increase supervisor visits to all looms. However, this may not be operationally feasible due to the limited number of supervisors that we have. Then the question becomes, who should we visit? We potentially have two approaches to tackle this. The first one is just to follow the empirical analysis and target more difficult to weave ROGs. And the other approach is to use machine learning tools to find ROGs that are likely to have weaving rates and thus target our supervisor visits towards them. And this is what we have for the prediction results using the two different approaches. So following this idea, we would define our village level target visit, omega j, as being a higher number for villages with a loom not being productive and a smaller number otherwise. We further define a binary decision variable, which indicates whether village VJ is going to be visited on day T or not. And our objective is to minimize the difference between the target visits and the scheduled visits so that we can eventually ensure that looms with low productivity will get a higher number of visits. Now let's take a closer look at the formulation of our optimization problem. So we get the target visit constraint. We get the constraint that practically set an upper bound on the work time. We get the valid tour constraint, the no sub-tour constraint, and finally the constraint that links the scheduling variable with the objective. Our objective is to minimize the difference between the scheduled visits and the target visits while ensuring that supervisors are following a valid tour, satisfying all the practical constraints. So for the problem of interest to our collaborators, we're able to solve this exact integer program. However, for problem of larger scales, solving the exact optimization problem can be computationally expensive as it contains an exponential number of constraints. So in the paper, we draw the connection between this optimization problem to a celebrated team orienteering problem and give some polynomial time algorithm. And I'd be happy to chat more about it offline. So now I'm going to talk about the numerical results by following this framework. We use the historical data to create a machine learning prediction model, and then rugs in the last 3 months will be in the test set. So for every active rug in the test set, we're going to do the following procedure. We're going to select rugs that need extra supervisor visits, decide on number of visits, design supervisor routes based on the optimization problem that I just showed you, and then recommend supervisor routes. We're going to repeat this process for every week. To assess the overall effectiveness of this framework, we're going to consider 4 policies. Policy select hard to weave and optimize follows the empirical analysis and select hard to weave routes to target and then optimize. Policy machine learning predict and optimize using machine learning prediction for the prediction part and then optimize. In comparison to the baseline policy that is currently being employed by our collaborator, it gives the overall effectiveness of this framework. And further, we consider this naive predict and optimize framework that used previous week's weaving rate before doing the optimization. So this figures give the overall effectiveness of this framework. On the left-hand side, we have the average weekly supervisor visits across all villages with looms of low productivity. Whereas on the right-hand side, we have that for villages with looms of high productivity. As you can see, in comparison to the benchmark baseline policy, all 3 policies increase their visits to villages with low productivity looms and decrease their visits to villages with looms of high productivity. Thus indicating that this framework is indeed appropriately allocating supervisor visits towards those looms that are in need of it. However, out of all these 3 policies, the machine learning predict and optimize policy outperformed the other 2 by better targeting the looms with low productivity. So remember, like in our empirical analysis, we do see 2 to 11% of increase in productivity by decreasing the average number of days between supervisor visits, and this can be translated into a increase in weaver productivity of 3 to 16% by following this framework. So following the encouraging results from our numerical analysis, we collaborated with stripper rugs and put it into field. So we select the treatment group by first selecting a major branch with our collaborator with sufficient number of active weavers and geographically complex loom distribution that necessitates a better scheduling and routing for the supervisors. Then for selection of the treatment supervisors, the domain knowledge of our collaborators confirmed that these 2 groups are comparable in terms of like experience, social connections in local communities, and work attitude. So note that this is not an RCT, and following the previous analysis, we have 79 looms from 2 supervisors in the control group and another 126 looms from 2 different supervisors in the treatment groups. To ensure a successful launch of this implementation, we had extensive discussions with the treatment supervisors and the branch managers to account for their practical concerns and preferences. And we also developed this visualization tool, as you see on the right-hand side, to track and encourage supervisor compliance. So this visualization tool is pretty flexible. It gives you information about how many looms are located in every village, and also the potential travel time across villages. We use this to encourage supervisors to follow our proposed routes, and we end up having over 85% of supervisors, treatment supervisors, following our proposed routes. So this implementation was eventually launched in mid-April 2023 in the branch Thanagazi of India. We implemented for 25 consecutive weeks. We collect over 8,000 supervisor visit records across 300 looms for 1,100 runs. So our data is at supervisor visit level. It has the exact date of supervisor visits together with extensive covariates logged at the time of supervisor visit. So to assess the effect of our implementation, we employ a diff and diff approach. So the relative small size of our sample, together with the non-controlled field setting, prevent us to make a causal claim. But however, this observational analysis should still shed some light on the benefit of bringing this framework to field. So this figure illustrates the distribution of weaving rate before and after implementation for the treatment and control looms. And you can see that for the treatment looms, the increase in weaving rate is higher than its counterpart post implementation. We confirm that the parallel trend assumption is satisfied in our setting, and this is the main specification for our DID analysis. So the DID analysis suggests a 17% increase in weaving rate for the treatment. Just to quick recap, we did rigorous empirical analysis to examine the impact of supervisor visits on Artisans' productivity. We proposed this scheduling and routing framework to allocate supervisor visits efficiently, and then we also run field implementation with our collaborator and see 17% increase in weaving rate for the treatment looms. So thank you, and I'm open for questions. I think one question and the other questions offline. Yeah.
I guess maybe I missed this in the presentation, but it seems like you're dealing the weaver population here is like a very disadvantaged group. I mean, like, you know, sometimes there's child labor involved, stuff like that. And I'm wondering whether like this is at all, I mean, like, you know, considered or studied within this study, like the effects on them and whether they are, I mean, you know, it could be like, you know, that you're creating a situation where the supervisors are like placing those people in more kind of like stress or duress or something like that. Is that something that came up in discussions, or, you know, you said you did field visits and stuff like that? Do you get to interact with a representative sample of the weavers and so on?
Right, so we did ask some questions during the field visits, and they actually, asked the weavers. We had more interactions with weavers than supervisors actually, and they are pretty welcoming about this new change because they themselves, as I said earlier, this is incentive compliant. They also want to have more income being made for them throughout this process. And we also did IRB approved survey with the weavers for 2,000 weavers, I think. We asked them whether they do find the supervisor visit helpful, or does it actually create extra stress on them that make them feeling less productive, and the result is also pretty nice, like positive in terms of that.